One of the greatest discoveries in the whole world of stem cell research is the role of stem cells in longevity and in disease formation. So of course, the role of stem cells in its regenerative properties is fascinating. But as scientists studied the role of stem cells in the body, this whole new understanding of disease formation emerged. So let's dive a little bit into this to understand what I mean here. When scientists study the role of stem cells in tissue repair, they need to mark the stem cells in order to be able to follow it and see as it travels to, let's say we trigger a heart attack, to see the stem cells going to the heart and becoming heart cells. So the way to follow a stem cell, there are two main ways. Number one is to inject in the nucleus of a stem cell a gene for green fluorescent protein. Now that stem cell is going to make green fluorescent protein, but if that stem cell migrates into the heart and multiplies to become, let's say, 1,000 heart cells, all these heart cells will be green, and you can identify them very easily by shedding light on them. And that's a way to really visualize the whole role of stem cells in the body. The other approach is to essentially irradiate a female mouse or whatever the animal that is used to do the study, and then inject stem cells coming from a male animal. So all these stem cells have the Y chromosome, and it's possible to detect the Y chromosome in a cell. So as you trigger an injury into any of the tissues and stem cells migrate in that tissue, you can quantify or illustrate all the cells of that tissue, part of that process of regeneration, that all have the Y chromosome. So you can show that all these cells came from stem cells. So many scientists did these kinds of studies. And as this was done, something emerged that was completely unexpected, is that as scientists did one specific model, let's say scientists are going to study diabetes, and they're triggering diabetes in an animal, triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, seeing these stem cells going into the pancreas, transforming into insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. After that study, at times you're left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mice in the lab, extra mice in the study in case there's a problem, and then these mice become pets in the lab. I've seen this. I've had mine in the lab. And then later on, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 months later, the scientists asked the question, what if we were to go now in this animal and see how many cells we can see in various tissues that have either the Y chromosome or have this green fluorescent protein? And from this emerged the whole understanding that, yes, stem cells will primarily go at one point in time to an injury, or where there's a real need for tissue repair. But in the background, stem cells are going to constantly migrate in various tissues just for the maintenance of those tissues, just simply to replace the cells that are being lost. So now that was great in an animal, but the question very rapidly was, do we see this also in humans? And there is one set of circumstance in which we can observe this in human, and it is when a woman receives, as a treatment for leukemia, bone marrow transplant from a male compatible donor. So after that transplant, that means the woman, all of her stem cells in her bone marrow now have the Y chromosome. All the cells in her body have double X chromosome. So it's very easy to identify a stem cell that has migrated in any organs and tissue and has become a cell of that tissue because it has the Y chromosome. So scientists went back into bank of tissue biopsies taken from women who had passed away a year, 5, 10, 15 years after such a bone marrow transplant, and looked to quantify the number of cells in all these tissues, the heart, the liver, the lung, everything in the body, the brain. How many of the cells in these tissues have the Y chromosome? And the picture emerged. The same observation was made in humans. Every stem cells will migrate in every single tissue of the body, and every single tissue and organ of the body has its own turnover rate. Now, there's no study, or very few studies have been done to really examine or study that phenomenon. But of the studies that have been done, either direct observation or incidental observation, the picture is emerging. You have a new liver around every 2-3 years, a new pancreas 4 to 6 years, new lung 4 to 6 years, new skin every month, new lining of the intestine every 5 days, new muscle every 9 years, and even a new heart. heart, half of a new heart every 25 years. We don't have good data on the brain, but one thing that is clear is that this idea that the brain cannot regenerate and cannot repair is completely untrue. The brain is also constantly in a process of tissue turnover, or at least tissue maintenance with stem cells. So now, as we discover that this is a process that is taking place in the body, meaning that health or disease formation is not to get born, to then age, mature, reach 20, 25 years old with peak health, and then from there on, we start to accumulate wear and tear, exposure to environmental toxins, free radicals, DNA damage, and the consequence of all of this is basically a slow decline with age as we age. The discovery that have been made with stem cells is telling us a completely different story. We are born with red marrow that makes stem cells. The red marrow converts into yellow marrow or fatty marrow very early in our lives. By age 30, we have lost almost 95% of the red marrow. And that is mirrored by a sharp decline in the number of stem cells in circulation. We're born at something like anywhere between 150 to 200 stem cell per microliter. And by age 30, 40, we're down to maybe 5 to 8 stem cell by microliter. So you can see that very, very significant decline. So as we age, we continue to lose cells every day at the same rate. This is the normal turnover process of organs and tissues. But the number of stem cells available to offset that cellular loss, go and replace the cells that are being lost, that number declines, and past 30, this is when somewhere in our 30s we discover that we're no longer Superman or Wonder Woman. At there's a point in your 30s you realize you're not repairing as well as you used to. That's because you don't have as many stem cells as you had when you were younger. So from that point on, every day you don't have enough stem cell to just offset your normal day-to-day cellular loss. From that day, from that point on, and for the rest of your life, every day is the very, very slow and small accumulation of unrepaired damages. And as they accumulate, depending where they are in your body, in your liver, in your heart, in your pancreas, well, that is going to lead to either liver failure, heart disease, Parkinson, regardless where the cellular loss is targeting you, depending on your genetics, your past injuries, your lifestyle, your exposure to environmental toxins, a whole slew of factors. You know what is the weak part in your body. That is where cellular loss will accumulate, and that's the problem that you will have down the road. So this whole understanding of disease formation caused by a decline in the number of stem cells, this is something that I published in 2013. In that article, I was proposing that one way to test this hypothesis is to go and count the number of stem cells in the blood circulation of people who have developed all kinds of age-related problems. And now many of these studies have been done and published. And what we can see literally across the board, if you count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people who have developed atherosclerosis, heart disease, erectile dysfunction, arthritis, diabetes, lung problem, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, arthritis, liver failure, kidney failure, and the list keeps growing. All these people have at least less than half the number of stem cells found in a normal person of the same age, a healthy person of the same age. So the one parameter that is across the board missing in people who have developed age-related problems is that they have fewer stem cells in circulation. And it's easy to understand. It's simply because given that they have fewer stem cells in circulation, the number of stem cells is not enough to offset cellular loss, and then cellular loss accumulates in the life of these people. And as we well know, every single age-related problem is the consequence of the loss of a type of cells. You lose the cells making insulin, it's diabetes. You lose cells in your heart, cardiomyopathy. You lose cells making dopamine in the brain, Parkinson. You lose cells in your lung, emphysema, and so on and so forth. So losing cells is the cause of all age-related problems, and stem cells in your body, their role is to replace the cells that are being lost. Just by putting a little bit more stem cells in circulation every day, we can dramatically offset that cellular loss, compensate for this, and help the body repair and stay healthy as we age.